So if you're not watching this on video and you're listening to this, I am wearing my San Francisco 49ers hat. I'm not going to say, Gabe, that I'm like a diehard fan. I'm definitely a fair weather fan. Um, but it was heartbreaking to participate and watch that Super Bowl. I got to tell you, so I was invited to a Super Bowl party, two of them. So one of them, when Ashley watches a Super Bowl, so Ashley and Caden are very into football, very into it. So they wanted an environment where they could like really watch the game. I don't know how this environment is for you, which I want to hear from. But for me, it's more like, it's like a time to get together. I put money down on like those squares to see if I win, like based on like the score. And like, it's more of just like eating good food and celebrating with friends and watching the commercials. So I was at this one party because Ashley wanted to go like take it seriously. So she went somewhere else. Well, it just so happened that the place where she was at was on top of the hill, and the place that I was at the bottom of the hill. So I drop her off and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to ride my bike down this hill. So I ride my bike down this hill. I mashed, dude. I just mashed down this hill. But what I forgot was that what goes down needed to go back up. So sure enough, I'm sitting there, I'm eating a bunch of ribs. I'm eating all this crap. And then I got to climb this like super steep hill on my bike. And that was my Super Bowl experience. But anyways, how you doing this morning?
For anyone that doesn't know, like the hills by where Jason lives are no joke. Like I think that it should go without saying that like you're not exaggerating. If it's anything like the hill that goes up to your house,
Dude,
um,
it's the same
yeah.
steepness, just like three times, like five times as long. It was terrible. I had to get off the bike at one point because I just wasn't going anywhere. I just had to get off. I just walked.
Oh man, I just want to know. So what is the party that Ashley went to that like allowed her to take it more seriously? I need to know the difference here. I'm very curious.
So she went to a party of like five people, six people that were like all diehard Niner fans, like season ticket holders. And so they all were like observing the game. And
Got
I
it, got
went
it,
to a
got it.
party
So
of
it's like the difference of like people like schmoozing, talking, like, not really paying attention to the game versus people that are like, that wasn't a holding call. Like, what the
exactly.
hell? Yeah,
Exactly. And
okay.
then I went to
Got
another party that had like 60 people where they're all from like the kids' school. They're just like messing around. But it is
got it.
interesting.
Got
Like,
it.
I mean,
Right.
but dude, there
So
were there
in
were some people
in one, the
invest.
Super Bowl is more like background. In the
Yeah.
other one, the Super Bowl is like, we're watching the Super Bowl.
Yeah. One is like an excuse to have a party. The other one is like, hey, I'm really, really gonna watch this. So
Got it.
anyways, but I'm rocking my hat because I had to do it. Well, we definitely want to talk about the Super Bowl today. I did want to tell you, so I was right before about to start recording. I just got an email to Jason at th.fit. So if you're listening to this podcast, we get a lot of emails coming through. It's been really great. Jason at th.fit. If you're not on the newsletter, make sure to subscribe. This guy writes back to me. This is just like a good one to like kind of kickstart my morning. He goes, "Yo, Jay, I just started my jiu-jitsu journey this past month. How can I get cauliflower ear?" that's that's his whole. It's like, be careful what you wish for, man, because what happens with cauliflower is like it won't come, and then it'll come like in vengeance, and then once you get it, it'll just like when it blows up, it gets huge. So, anyways, my advice to this guy would be, you really don't want to get it. You really don't. You want to avoid it for as long as possible because your spouse might not find it attractive. Like you
Is
want
it
to avoid it.
is it painful or an inconvenience as well? Or not really? It's just aesthetic. Because I told you, dude, I think cauliflower, I mean, I don't want cauliflower ear, but I'm telling you, dude, it's definitely a look. I think that like, dude, if I like 100%, if I see someone with cauliflower ear, I'm like, dude, don't want to mess with that guy. 100%.
Yeah, I think for every guy that you see with excessive cauliflower ear, like a lot, there's probably three that don't have it who have trained just as long. That's the craziest part about it is like you don't know if you're going to get it or not. Like I was reading this one article, the guy's like, yeah, when I was a white belt, the first 3 months I got cauliflower ear, then I drained it, it went away. I've been training now for 10 years and I've never gotten it again. So you just never know what's going to happen, but typically, like, dude, if you pay attention, you're wearing headgear. If you're not super aggressive with your head in like certain things, you could try and avoid it, but sometimes you can't, man. Like if you're getting held in a triangle and you try and get out and that cartilage just breaks, it is what it is. But for me, where it makes a difference is that when I know it's blown up, I intentionally won't train or I'll train with headgear. guys who are pros, they don't have that luxury. So it'll just get worse and worse and worse. But I don't think the goal should be to strive to get cauliflower. You know, it's funny. I used to skateboard. This is like when I was a kid. I used to skate and you would grind on stuff, right? Like, I don't know if you ever skated, but you could do a 50-50, which is on the trucks, or you could do a board slide, which is like in between the two trucks, right? You would like, ollie onto something and board slide. And you knew someone was a badass when the bottom of their board or their trucks looked super beat up because they had been grinding a lot. And when I was a young kid, I remember like I would kind of like exaggerate my board. Like I would do some grinding, but I'd also just like kind of take it and give it a little run on there myself with my hands because I wanted to look more rugged. It's kind of the same thing in cauliflower. Like, don't be that guy. Like, don't intentionally try and get it. If it happens, it happens. I would try and avoid it if I was you, though.
Man, that's funny, dude. It's funny how people associate certain things with, the either the sport or like the like training and skills that come with it. And maybe missing the forest for the trees a little bit there. But that's a funny email to start your day with.
Yeah. Yes, it definitely was. Kind of jump started it. But yeah, man, aside from that, everything's rocking and rolling. I did want to kind of start off. We've been talking about this on the podcast for weeks and months, training for the Tactical Games. So the Tactical Games were originally scheduled for February 24th of this month. And we're like, I don't know, 10 days out. I got some news about 2 days ago. It's been kind of in the making. We've been struggling with some stuff, which I kind of talked about here a little bit, like, I've been struggling with this a little bit. But 2 days ago, we found out Ava will be going into a, 24/7 kind of residency, they call it. And the visiting hours for this residency, because of a health condition she's going through, are Saturday, Sunday from 4 to 6 p.m. And that's it. So needless to say, I've pulled out from this first Tactical Games. I've informed the team. I've let them all know. I had already, I'd paid my registration. I had bought my ticket. I had done everything, right? I've been training my butt off for this. I was really looking forward to it. But this is one of those really, really simple examples for me where, if you only have a couple hours a week to see your child, I can't spend that in Arizona shooting guns and doing fitness. It's just, it wouldn't feel right. So will there be a time where I get back and I compete? Absolutely. I'm super excited about the Tactical Games and I want to continue to train. It's just this one right now, it's just one of those examples where you got to put family first. And I think anybody in my particular situation would understand that if you only had 2 hours a week to see your kid, you wouldn't be spending that on an airplane shooting guns. So that's kind of where I'm at. Definitely can share more about this in the future. It's kind of tough to talk about. So, but for now, that's kind of where we're at with it.
Yeah, man. I think that it's a no-brainer decision and something we talk about a lot on the podcast and newsletter. Me and you have these conversations all the time. Like the reason that we do all the stuff that we do, right? The different things we train for, the actual workouts, like even like work, the podcast, like it's for them, and they come first. And, I think that not only would people understand your decision, I think that it's the decision that I think everyone would expect you to make, like a no brainer. Like,
Yeah.
not only would it not feel right for you to be out there, like, home comes first, man. And that's where the priority is now. So yeah, man, I appreciate you sharing because I know a lot of people were excited to have you out there. So, not kind of leaving them hanging like, hey, where's Jason Khalipa once Arizona rolls around? But it is what it is. This too shall pass and you'll be back at the Tactical Games and everyone will be good before you know it, man. But yeah, sending nothing but good vibes.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. It's like when she was diagnosed with leukemia, it was an easy decision to stop competing in CrossFit. It was just like so easy. This one, like we had been struggling for a little while with some stuff, and I was like, on the fence about a few things. But then once she got put into this, residency program, it was just like a super clear cut, like, bro, I'm out. Like, there's just no other option. So, but that being said, like, I think that people should get excited about the Tactical Games. It's going to be an amazing year. Matt Chan's actually looking at, competing. I know Jacob Hepner. If you guys are in the CrossFit space, you definitely know those two names. And I'm still looking forward to it. It's just, it is a good example. And you're right, Gabe. and then we can kind of move on. But it is a really good example that like on this podcast, through the newsletter, through everything we do, like we train, we get after it to show up the best we can for our family, and to be that guy that you look back 10, 20, 30 years from now, you're like that guy lived by the code. And like we just had Ben Alderman on the podcast last week, and he lives by a code. And that code is family, right? And serving and wanting to show up the best you can for them. And all these different things we do help us show up the best we can for them, like training and finding outlets so we could be the best version of ourselves. But if those outlets and those training start to take you away from your core value of like the why you're doing it in the first place, then, you know, you're not practicing what you're preaching, and you're not staying true to that course. Right. And for me, it's like training, all these things I do, tactical games included, jiu-jitsu included, they're designed to put me in the right state of mind to learn something new, have fun, and give me the freedom so I could go and do things with my kids and show up the best I can. And, you know, not competing is just me continuing to live by that ethos of making sure that I'm not allowing my personal journey on fitness or competition to impact what's truly important when I look back 10, 20, 30 years from now. And I say, hey, we talked about this on the podcast, like, will it matter in 5 seconds, 5 minutes, or 5 years? And it's like, this is one of those things where, will it matter in 5 seconds? Well, yes. Will it matter in 5 minutes? Yes. Will it matter in 5 years? Will I look back 5 years from now and be like, damn, that was a bad decision to go, go shooting instead of, and being there. So, but that's, I just want to make sure that I acknowledge that on the podcast, because we have been talking about it. And it was a really difficult conversation with Nick Thayer, who's the, who runs it, because I kind of felt like I let him down, right? Like I had really committed to this, and I've been very vocal about it, but I had to kind of realize like that's my own thing in the way. Like anybody who hears what's going on, they're like, oh yeah, makes sense. We'll see you in June. We'll see you in the next competition. Like there'll be another one. There's plenty this year.
Dude, I think it goes without saying, you're not letting anyone down, man. Like you're doing what we would all expect you to do as the great father and husband you are. So all good, man, but let's move on. I think that this kind of segues, but not really. Well, I think it kind of does. So when this comes out on Thursday, yesterday, the newsletter that went out talked a bit about this idea that we were talking about. And it's funny because you were talking about the Super Bowl, and that's like where I noticed it. And I know that this is something that's been, you've learned this in many ways in the CrossFit Games and sports, but isn't it so interesting, man, how like, you're watching the game, and for anyone that didn't watch the Super Bowl, if you didn't, it went to overtime, right? So this is like, for these guys, this is like the highest stakes. This is the thing that like everyone strives for, like winning the Super Bowl. That's how legacy's made. Like I can't think of like more chips, in the pot, right? And they're in overtime. Like stakes are like at an all-time high. And while the defense is on the field, they pan to the offensive players that are going to have to come in during overtime and try to score or whatever. And these guys are literally sitting there. Like if you remove them, like the fact that they were like at the game, you would think that they're like waiting for the bus, like literally.
Yeah.
Like they're so calm. Cause you think about it, right? Like if you think about moments that have been, pretty high pressure, like competing in a team, and, obviously nowhere near the stakes of the Super Bowl, but you're like, you're like legs jittering. You're like, like pumping your teammates up, like you're standing up. You're like, what's going to happen? But I think that at least what we took away from it and what we were talking about was this idea that like these guys at the top of their game need to master this art of like conserving energy, and knowing that like, them being super amped up while they're not the ones on the field having to do their job is part of their job. Like their job is to be able to turn it off so that they can turn it on when they have to go out there. And I think that like there's such an interesting parallel there to life in general, because there are going to be times where it's like smooth sailing, right? There are going to be times where like shit's not hitting the fan. And those are the times where not only should you be, conserving energy, but also like doing the work to make sure that you're prepared for when, shit does hit the fan, because it always will. And I think that that's where a lot of people maybe are missing the opportunities of, things are going to get rough, maybe not super rough, but, even in a game, in a sport, whatever. I'm sure that in the CrossFit Games, one of the things that you had to do was like chill the F out before you went out there to go do a workout or lift, because you being all amped up in the warm-up area is going to do nothing but, hurt your performance once you're out there. So I thought that was interesting, man. And I thought it was impressive how calm, cool, and collected these athletes can be when the stakes are as high as they are, because that's what they need to do.
That's
so
right.
that they can go out there and do their thing.
It's super interesting you bring this up. In the newsletter in particular, we were talking about it, and I'll use myself as a example. So like 2009 CrossFit Games come around, and I'm like, at the time I was the current champion. And so I go in there and I'm like, I thought I had to like fire myself up. So I'm like, listen to Eminem and Tupac and Dr. Dre, and I'm just fired up. And it took a lot of, I had my adrenaline so high for so long that it basically depleted the storage. And I just like ended up blacking out. And so you can see videos of me where I just black out and I have to get back up again. And the reason for that was because I had taken these energy reserves. I had taken, everything that I had, and I had been expelling it before the event had even started. And it's a really good example of conserving energy and not needing to get pumped up. Like, you don't need to get pumped up. You're going to get pumped up enough. And it's like for the Super Bowl, for example, if these guys are on the sidelines, staying ready, staying fired up, it's like, dude, they don't need to do that, because as soon as they step onto that field and the crowd, 100,000 people are cheering, like they're gonna step up to the plate. They know they will, but they also need to down regulate their body so that they're not just exhausting all those energy reserves. And that's something that I had to learn the hard way, man. Like I blacked out in 2009, 2010 was just a mess. And both of those years, I contribute much of that challenge to thinking that I needed to pump myself up, when in reality, the more that you get your energy up and you get in that state, you just can't stay there very long. In 2010, the event was at like 9 p.m. or no, it wasn't that late. It was like 7 p.m. And dude, I thought all day I had to stay ready. It's like, dude, no, it's the complete opposite. You need to conserve, listen to like some country music, some reggae, just chill. And then you're going to perform. But I just had this false impression in my mind that like I needed to stay ready all day. And I don't know exactly how that correlates to real life, but in sport, for sure, you don't need to get your adrenaline up for so long, because it will deplete and you won't be able to perform. And I think in real life, I don't know exactly how that transfers over, but I've definitely seen it in sport. That's for damn sure.
Yeah. I mean, I think to me, when I think about it, like this week is a pretty good example. So Shay's been pretty sick all week. He caught like a stomach bug, and I ended up getting it too. It was a rough day yesterday, but I think it's like knowing the fact that, we're going to have like a super fussy kid. We're changing diapers literally like every 20 minutes, this poor kid. Like the time that I choose to go to bed, for example, knowing that, it's not an easy week. Like I could stay up, because usually, especially at night, like once they go to bed, it's usually my time to like, maybe I'll put on the TV or just kind of like, I used to spend
no more social media for you, at least for the
no more social media.
Yeah.
But, like just making sure that I'm doing what I need to do when I have the decision of I can go this way or I can go that way, to make sure that I can show up better, because I know that, things aren't ideal right now. I think that to me is like a very, like relevant example right now. But I think like even thinking more long-term, I think that the analogy to me is like making sure that you're taking care of your health when you are able to, so that when you don't have time, when things are kind of crazy, like you built that hedge so that you're in a much better place to deal with, long nights, high stress, being super busy, like whatever are the things that happen when something happens that's outside of your control. Like that to me is maybe not a perfect analogy, but that's what I think of. It's like, there are going to be times in life where you have to perform as a husband, as a father, as an athlete, to your example. And there are going to be times where you don't necessarily. And when you don't necessarily, are you doing everything in your power to prepare yourself for when you do have to perform? Because that's when you do it. That's when you do the work. If you get to the point where you have to perform, you're like, man, like I should really be taking care of my health and working out and making sure that I'm in shape right now. Like that's when you don't have time to do those things. It's when you have time that you should be doing it. So I don't know, that's what I started thinking about. But either way, it was an interesting thing that I noticed while watching the Super Bowl. And man, dude, I can't imagine the pressure of being a kicker. Can you imagine that pressure? Dude,
So,
I think being a kicker is like the most thankless job on the planet. Like
so
you're
I say,
expected to make every kick.
well, you are, but here's the thing. Okay. All right, here we go. Because I think the kicker position, it's a messed up position. Here's the reason why.
Dude, it's brutal.
You don't really do much all game long. Like you really don't. Maybe you kick the ball a few times or whatever it is, and you do some kickoffs and whatever. But dude, it's basically a zero, like all or nothing for them. They're either praised as like the guy or they're worthless. And unlike the other players who get, I want to say the average football game gets like what 50 snaps or something like that. I could be wrong, like 50 or 100 plays, somewhere in that range. Um, they have 50 or 100 or however many opportunities to like, you know, to do okay, right? These guys get a few. So, but at the same time, I don't really have much sympathy for them because these guys are getting paid, especially if you're a really good one, you're getting paid millions and millions of dollars. And that is your job. Like your job is to execute this particular skill set. But it's definitely, yeah, they must go through high levels of mantra visualization training. They have to, like, they must go through like this model where they warm up the exact same, they get on the field the exact same, they high five their long snapper and the position holder. It must go through their mind because, dude, otherwise, if they actually realize what's going on, it must mess with their head. That's a tough job, very tough job.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think, I mean, I don't feel bad for them because yeah, they're professional athletes. They're getting paid to do a job and they have to do it. But I do think it's like, it's almost unfair because I feel like this happens all the time, right? Like a defensive player misses a tackle, like an unexcusable missed tackle leads to a touchdown. Like there's no headlines about that missed tackle and the fact that he lost the team the game,
Yeah.
like a wide receiver drops a pass. Like also, I feel like everyone forgets everything that happens in the game. But dude, if your game on the line and you have to kick a field goal and you miss it, you lost the game for the team, even though maybe they shouldn't have been in that position to begin with. But anyway, dude, I can't imagine the pressure of that. Like,
Or how about the fact that they missed an extra point at the Super Bowl? Like,
dude, brutal.
Come on.
Brutal.
I mean, that's the game. But at the same time, and I think about this a lot coaching flag football, which is not the exact same, but like the kids get super like last game, it was a rough game, dude. Caden had like 2 seconds left. He threw this bomb down the field and the throw was pretty good. It wasn't caught well because the defender like defended it really well. It was just like a well defended play. Wasn't anybody's fault. And it was easy at that moment to be like, oh, either Caden or this other boy or whoever lost the game. It's like, well, dude, all the moments of that game put you in a position where like the kicker didn't win or lose the game. Like the team lost because they should have put him in a better position than to have it be down to 3 points, right? Or in Caden's position, like it shouldn't have came down to one last play. I mean, as an example, in theory, but in practical application, dude, when a kicker misses a kick, you're like, bro, that's what he's getting paid for. And there's the game. That's a tough gig, but hey, then again, they're professional athletes. It is what it is.
Yeah, it is what it is. But man, I love the Super Bowl. Even like, I wouldn't say I had a horse in the race. I was rooting for San Francisco because most of the friends that I know are, 49er fans. So it was a fun game. It was a fun ending. It's so funny that you and Ashley went to different Super Bowl parties.
Well, so yes, she went to the first half. She went to she went to his house the whole time.
Was she so bummed?
What's that?
Was she so bummed that they lost?
She was pretty bummed. The people that we were at the house with were very
dude,
bummed.
That's got to be brutal. They're like season ticket holders.
Yeah, yeah. Like we went to a couple games with them. Like, yeah, it was rough.
God, that's heartbreaking.
And Caden, he had just a shitty day because Saturday we lost a tough loss for flag football. Like, dude, just tough. We've had a couple tough losses, and then Sunday for them to lose. It was just like, salt on the wound. But I was going to tell you, so I got up for the halftime show. So my favorite halftime show that I've seen lately, and so my favorite national anthem was definitely Chris Stapleton. I thought he did an incredible job. This year's I wasn't able to really hear it as well because we had like 100 people at this party. But the halftime show, I don't know if you and I have different opinions about this. First off, Usher is an incredible entertainer. He can move his feet. I don't know if it's his pants that like make it look like he's literally floating on ice. But bro, his ability, I don't, they call it a glide, I think, right? Like his ability to glide is like next level. He started to take off his top, right? He got down to like a tank top, and I thought he looked pretty jacked for being 45 and like his background. I thought he looked pretty ripped. Do you think he should have taken it off all the way to no shirt? Or you think he should have stayed on with just the tank top? What do you think?
I mean, when he took his shirt off, I was like, I immediately, and I think everyone did this. I like read an article about it. Like everyone started Googling his age, and he's 45. So when I looked at it, he was 45. I was like, dude, it's not bad for 45. But yeah, maybe the tank top would have been the ideal move. But hey, man, dude, if I looked like that at 45, I wouldn't be mad about
it. Dude, obviously he looked good. He looked fit. But I would have probably just kept on the tank top. You know, I think
just keep the tank top.
I would have just kept on the tank top. That's what I would have done. But then again, I'm also not performing in front of 100 million people, and I don't have that opportunity.
You also, like, in general, have never been a big shirt off type of guy, which is very interesting coming from the CrossFit space. There was a time where, like, if your shirt was on, you weren't really doing CrossFit.
If your shirt was on, yeah, that's right. There was always like those memes that would come out. It's like, and I've seen it in the gym so many times, bro. Like people will be like 30 seconds into a workout and their shirt comes off. And I'll be like, already? Like, yeah, I got too hot. I'm like, yeah, okay, buddy. Like,
yeah, you didn't get too hot.
You didn't get too hot. Like, hey, I got to tell you. So if you had asked me a year ago, if you had said, hey, Jason, do you see yourself getting interested in a golf membership, or do you see yourself getting a PlayStation for your son? I would have said, absolutely not. No way. And the older I get
to both of them.
Yep. This is a super important lesson. I just keep learning every single year is that, like, just when you think you're stuck in your ways and this is the way it is, you got to be open-minded because things might change and you might need to pivot over here. And so nowadays I never say never, like, because at this point it's like, you never know what's going to happen and you never know what's going to feel right at that time. And you make the best decision you can with the information you have. And so, yeah, long story short, I'll have to keep you apprised, but like, because Ashley likes to, you know, golf and whatnot, and she could do that with Caden, we're looking at a golf membership for them, but the PlayStation one's the big one. So I've been super anti video games forever. Never wanted Caden to play at our house. He could play anywhere else he wanted. But like a couple of months ago, he started watching like these YouTube shorts and like YouTube about the 49ers. So he would go on in the morning before he went to school for like 20 minutes and he'd watch like YouTube, like mic'd up content from like the 49ers. And dude, it got super annoying after a while because he would just like find these YouTube clips that were just like annoying. But then on top of that, I wanted to find another way to do something with him that wasn't just like, dude, we play football, we play sports all the time. But sometimes it's raining outside. Sometimes things are going on and his friends won't come over to our house as much because, especially when the weather's crappy, they want to play video games together. They want to be able to play Madden. They want to be able to do these games together. And so I've kind of changed my tune and we ended up getting him a PlayStation because for his birthday, because my justification is that it's an opportunity for me to still do something with him on crappy weather days. And it's a way that him and his friends can do something together on those days. But we just got to put regulation on time within it. So I just want to raise my hand and be like, hey, man, I've been the anti-PlayStation guy forever, but sometimes you got to make the best decision you can. In this particular time, it made sense.
And you know, I think it's a shame when, because I feel like this happens with a variety of different things in like the parenting world in general, but like, I think like similar to nutrition, like people are so dogmatic about some things or can even be judgy about, you know, like, oh my God, you use an iPad with your kid or like, oh, he has video games. And it's like, dude, who are you to tell someone else how to parent, first of all? Like it's the most uh, nutrition is one thing, but I think when it comes to parenting, dude, it's like the most obnoxious thing. Like everyone's going to do what they think is best. And like, I would never tell someone how to parent their kids, and no one is going to tell me how to parent mine. And like you said, man, like you make the best decision you can at the time. And I think that whenever it comes to like phone, TV, video games, like these things that like we know are quote unquote not good, um, I think it's counterproductive to be like very like never, you can never do this, you can never see it. I think that as long as you're encouraging all the other things, like, hey, let's spend time outside, let's play sports, let's do all these things. But, if it happens to be a day where like, the weather's really crummy and you still want to do something, like, is that the worst thing? Or is it better actually to allow them to do it there during those times so there isn't like a resentment built or like this like need to rebel down the line doing all these things that they couldn't do? I think that there's a very compelling case for that, and I'm sure we'll figure out all the things as our kids grow up about like, oh, we'll never do X, and then like 2 years later it's like, well, here we are.
Dude, yeah, Caden was shocked, dude. We told him, and he was crying with happiness because he never thought in his life he would get a game console because
I
we
could
had
literally see Caden's face.
like he was just so excited, and it was good. It's also a good thing because Ava's going to be gone for a little while. It's a nice thing for him to have, just like just to be able to kind of take his mind off some stuff. So yeah, timing was good. But anyways, that's the kind of lesson learned there, right? Is like, never say never, bro, because you think and to your point, like this idea of passing judgment, I think is long gone. You can't be doing that kind of stuff. So yeah,
No, for sure. I mean, is there things that you would be like, oh, I probably wouldn't do that? Sure, but like that's it. Like that's the extent that it should go. It's funny because in the beginning with Shay, he loves like Miss Rachel videos and stuff like that. And I think we actually definitely got to the point where he was watching them like a little too much. Like it was kind of like the one thing that he needed. Um, to kind of like calm down. So we've actually pared back significantly. And I think we found like a really good balance now of like when he can watch the TV and stuff. Because, dude, honestly, like for me, when I grew up, I learned English off of Sesame Street. Like to me, I think that there are also like, it depends on the type of TV that you're having your kids watch. Because when we first immigrated here, like my parents only knew Spanish. We only spoke Spanish at home. And once I started school, kindergarten, everyone was surprised that I like knew English. And I literally only knew English from watching, the TV. So it's not, is it a double-edged sword? Sure, but it's not all cons. And I think you just have to find your balance.
for sure, man. I was looking around my desk for the Mark Cuban book because there was two things I wanted to talk to you about in it.
Oh, it's a good book. I listened to the
grab it. I'll
audiobook
be right
a
back.
while back. Yeah, go for it. In the meantime, though, I'll give everyone an update on on the no social media thing. There it is.
Don't worry.
Right. Jason's back. I said in the meantime, a quick update on the no social media thing. So when we're recording this, we're 15 days, so like halfway through. You know what's interesting? So I told you my screen time is cut down by 2 hours, right? Which is, I think, goes to speak how much screen time I had before. But anyway, the interesting thing is the other stat you get on screen time, if you look on your phone, is how many pickups you have. So how many times you like
Oh,
open your phone.
yeah.
And here's the thing though, that number has not gone down by as much. It's gone down a little bit, but not as much because it's such a habit that I literally find myself just opening my phone, but now I have nothing to look at. So then I just immediately close it. But literally, it's just like a habit, right? Like you are walking to the bathroom. What do? You open your phone. You're like, get into the car or, I'm waiting for Ariel to come out. Like, what do? You open your phone. Except now I don't have something to look at it, but it's just been so telling, man, how much of a habit it's become. And I'm really glad that I'm doing this. And I'm trying to figure out some strategies, some ways that when I get back on, I'm like, not just like get sucked into it as bad as I was before. But it was interesting to see that that number has changed. But the other thing is now that like there are times where I'm just like, I would usually just be on my phone. Like a good example was Shay was sleeping in the car. Ariel went into the grocery store. I was like, I'll stay in the car so we don't have to wake him up. So I'm literally just in the car. She's going to be like 30 minutes. Usually what I would do is just spend that entire time on social media. But now that I don't have it, I feel like a lot of people say I should really text blank and you never do it, right? Like we've all done it. Like, hey, like you just the thought pops into your mind. You're like, man, I should really text that friend that I've had and like just haven't talked to him in a while and check in on him. And I've started doing that more lately, literally because I have my phone and I have nothing else to do. And it's
Dude,
been really good, man. I've like reached out to some like old members that I coached at TJ's in Marin. Just like, hey man, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. And I've had some like really good conversations. So I just wanted to put that out there too, that I think it's never a bad idea, especially if you're thinking about it. If it's someone that you're like, hey, I should really reach out to blank, just fucking do it. I
yeah.
promise you, nothing but positive will come out of it. So that's been a nice kind of little thing. But that's how 15 days into no social media apps on my phone is going. Very positive, but also very telling of how I don't like using the word addicted because it feels really negative if I say that, but I think that's honestly what it is. But it's so interesting how like captured we are to these devices.
Yeah.
So anyway,
Dude, no, that's a great. I like the fact. I thought you were going to say like, oh, I listened to a podcast or I read, but I like what you had to say about like reaching out to people and having conversation. I think that's what we're trying to do at the men's club. That's what we try and do on a regular basis, like create this like in-person connection that I think people are missing. And even if you're just texting, it's the exact same thing, you know, like, I mean, it's not the exact same thing, but it's close enough where
for
you can
sure.
have a back and forth. Um, dude, so I read this book a while ago, and I'm sure everybody listening to this, I'm positive, has seen Shark Tank. I mean, dude, if you haven't seen Shark Tank, especially with your kids, it's such a great show for the
It's
kids to
such a good
watch
show.
because
They
it's
do such a good job with that show, man. It's so good. It's so fun.
so good. And because they're really encouraging entrepreneurship. But like this, how to win. So Mark Cuban's book, How to Win at the Sport of Business. If I could do it, you could do it. I bought this book many years ago. It's been around for a long time. I actually ended up reading it the first time. I emailed him because at the end of his thing, he says, like, email me and I'll get back to you. And I'll never forget, I emailed him and he actually got back to me. I can't remember what I told him, but he actually got back to me, or at least it made me feel like he got back to me. Maybe not anymore, but anyways. But I thought that there was a few things at the end of the book. He goes into 12 Cuban mantras for success. And two of them that I thought were pretty interesting. One of them was um, you only have to be right once, meaning like you hear these people like, I don't know, Mark Cuban or whoever. And if you read his book, he talks about it. He did so many different businesses. Like, and I've talked about this on the Jocko podcast, went on between Batter Blaster and Faded Lifestyles and so many different things. But people
Yeah.
don't remember those, right? They only remember like the one thing that maybe hit. And we've had, you know, a lot of success with NCFIT, and we're super stoked on the growth of Train Hard and what we're building there. And maybe 10 years from now, people will just remember Train Hard, but they won't know about all the gyms that we opened and closed and this and that. And so his advice, his mantra, you only have to be right once, I think is a really good way of looking at things, because even if you fail, um, people won't remember that. They'll only know about the positives in the future.
For sure. And you learn from every failure, and every failure gets you closer to the thing that will be right. It goes back to kind of the war of attrition thing we've been talking about, because a lot of people will, fail once, most people once probably, but especially like once you get to like 3, 4 times, 5 times, and they're like, oh man, like this thing isn't for me. Meanwhile, it's like that picture that they show of like the guy, like that guy who's like mining for gold and gives up, but he was so close to the actual gold.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of people go through that, unfortunately. By the way, complete side story, but I didn't want to cut you off. The other day, Ariel was making pancakes in the kitchen. She looks at me and she's like, man, I could really use that Jason Khalipa thing for the pancakes.
Dude, I'm
And I
telling you,
was
bro.
laughing so hard.
Dude,
She didn't remember the name, but she literally looked at me and she was like, you know what'd be really useful right now? Is that thing Jason invested in for pancakes.
so before I go into my next thing from Mark Cuban's book, dude, yesterday,
Batter
uh,
blaster.
Ashley made some eggs and she made it in this pot, and then she put the pot in the sink. And there was like this little extra bit of eggs in there. I'm like, oh, I'm just like walking by the counter, don't think anything of it. I reach in, I grab the egg, I put it in my mouth, and it is terrible, like absolutely terrible. And I start like basically coughing this food up, and she's over in the corner. She's like, what's the matter? I was like, dude, I was like, I just had this egg and it tastes terrible. She's like, yeah, that's because there was a bunch of stuff on the bottom of the pan. I sprayed the whole thing with dish soap, and dude, it was just horrendous. Like you're expecting like this awesome egg, and you get this nasty, just like bitter taste. I ended up like dry heaving, whatever. I was so dramatic. But anyways, Ashley was laughing her ass off. But it's a really good sign. If a pot is in the sink, don't just reach in and grab it, is the lesson learned here.
Important lessons from Jason Khalipa.
All right. Number 2 on 12 Cuban mantras for success. This one I actually thought was pretty interesting. I thought it's good to talk about here. No balls, no babies. No balls, no babies. This is something a blackjack dealer once told me when I asked if I should hit or stick. It is also my favorite line, and probably the thing I tell myself the most. Once you're prepared and you think you have every angle of preparation covered, you have to go for it. No balls, no babies. So, you could take that for what you want to take that from, but basically, look, if you don't have the guts, like you're never gonna see the fruition of your different things. So I thought that was another one that I thought was pretty interesting. So
take the chance, take the leap, take the chance, take the risk, take the leap. Yeah, no I've heard it a bunch of different ways.
Have you heard that before?
No, but I mean, I've definitely heard everyone's heard like you have to take a chance. I like it worded no balls, no babies though.
So shout out to Mark Cuban if you're listening. I doubt you're listening.
I don't know if he's listening, but yeah, man. Shark Tank is an awesome show. And that book is good. His story is insane. I think the thing I appreciate most about his story is like just the resolve of like constantly finding the opportunity in every job he had, and just making it work. Yeah, man.
Yeah, when you watch the show too, you could tell like they seem like some good people. I like watching the show with the kids. So if you have kids and you're not watching Shark Tank, I'd highly recommend it. But yeah, man, look, dude, I think on this show, for me, I definitely want to talk a little bit about the Super Bowl. I think you're right. Like how to be composed when you're in those moments. It's like there's something we could take from that, even though you're not playing in the Super Bowl, that you could impart in your life, right? Just trying to stay composed through that, and building a hedge, obviously, for fitness. We're big fans of. But I definitely on this episode want to just address the tactical games. I don't want to make people feel like I'm there's going to be a lot more to discuss about some lessons I've been learning the last couple of months, but I kind of got to get a grasp around them first, and then I'll bring them to the audience to share, because I do think there's going to be a lot of takeaways that other people might be able to instill with their children in the future, or perhaps people who don't have the same outlet that we do with the same audience might be feeling a little bit alone in some of these conversations. I just want to let people know that other people are going through certain things. So expect more on that in the future. But for now, it's a little bit premature. We're still kind of in that fight. And I want to make sure that I know more about it before I try and talk about it. It doesn't seem necessary at this time.
Yeah. And I mean, I think I would assume that I speak for a lot of the people listening, in that like we all like very much appreciate like the honesty and transparency, and the fact that like the reason, you'll share whatever you're comfortable sharing is to help other people that, could either take away lessons or might be dealing with something similar. Like it's always about just helping people, because I feel like when you're dealing with something hard, you immediately feel like you're the only one dealing with that. And one of the most helpful things, because you've told me this many times with, leukemia and Ava, like having parents reach out to you that are dealing with the same thing, and how you take the time to talk to them always, that goes a long way. So I think I speak for most of this audience when thank you for sharing whatever it is you're comfortable sharing, but also like you don't owe anyone anything in terms of like, hey, we need the details of what's going on. So yeah. Just want to make sure that you know that. And I'm sure that people listening right now are like, yes.
Yeah, I'm just a big believer that, we've been given this opportunity to have a microphone in a variety of different ways. And I feel an obligation to do whatever I can to help people. And that's not just in their fitness, that's also going through life's challenges. Like life is tough. It has a lot of ups and downs. And I feel an obligation to other people that if I'm going through something and I can make an impact on one person by sharing something that's really helped me and made an impact, and or giving them an opportunity to reach out to me that are also going through something similar and not making them feel like they're on an island. Like that's the calling, right? That's the calling. That's the additional why is like, you want people to feel like, dude, I mean, so that's something we're going to discuss more in the future. I just got to figure out, what that looks like. But that's the plan. Man. That's the plan.
No, appreciate it. The other thing we wanted to touch on really quick, and I'm sure you can relate to this because I'm sure it's happened to you, but it was like the first time it like really happened to us. But like, dude, getting sick, like you getting sick, like me getting sick when you actually have kids, dude, it's a completely different ballgame. Like
there's no one to take care of it. Like, yeah, they're fully dependent on you.
It was the first time. So like, I didn't realize, and this is obvious now, like I'm going to say this and anyone listening, especially anyone listening that has kids, it's like, duh, but like, you don't realize how, like when you just feel terrible, cause it was stomach flu, like how, you'll just go and rest all day and just lay down and do nothing. And like, you can do that until you feel better, but then you have kids and then that's just like not an option. And it was just, it was one of those like funny in retrospect wake up calls of like, you don't know until you know. And it's just a completely different ball game. Like it's just, man. So that's been an interesting learning this week, but luckily I think I'm out of the woods. Shay's still feeling a little, hopefully he gets better in a day or two, but in the grand scheme of things, tiny things, but it was just funny because it was our first time and we were like, man, you remember when you felt sick and you were just like, all right, I'm going to go into my room for like 8 hours and do nothing. Those times are long gone.
Yeah, man. I was on a podcast yesterday. I was telling this lady, she was asking me about like overcoming adversity. I was like, well, I got some stuff going on. And we were just talking about it. I was like, look, I'm not here to judge what someone's, worst is, right? Like for someone, like for you getting a stomach flu and you haven't had to handle that before, like that's a really tough situation you have to overcome. And everybody, has different levels of tough. And like for you, it's like, that's where it's at. And so like, that's a really difficult thing to overcome. And I think that we need to appreciate that, like everybody's just doing the best they can with what they have going on, man. And, there's no better or worse, or I'm in it. Like, it's just like, dude, everybody's trying to do the best they can with their current situation. That's it.
Yeah. And everyone's dealing with something. I think that we've talked about this on the podcast too, but also just understanding that like, dude, you never know. You never know what someone's dealing with. Someone says something nasty, someone's whatever, like, you just don't know, man. They might be dealing with some really gnarly shit. And I think the best thing to do is if you're like always kind of just assuming that, I think the empathy that you can have just makes everything like just roll off your back, no problem, because you never know, man. And also makes you very grateful because you never know what other people have going on.
For sure. And then you don't talk shit to the wrong person who's on the wrong day and then get into some like random fight. Well, dude, I appreciate it. I appreciate you. I hope everybody listening is doing really well. Make sure to check out the podcast show notes for the newsletter. Just hit us up. Make sure that you're on the newsletter. First off, the Never Zero newsletter has been just awesome to get your guys' feedback. So make sure to check that out. And then next thing, make sure to go back, listen to Ben Alderman's episode. We have other new episodes coming out in the future. They're going to be awesome with guests. And if you could leave us a rating and a review wherever you listen to this show, it would be greatly appreciated. On behalf of myself, Gabe Yanez from the great state of Texas, rocking his hat. And we appreciate you.